Hi, welcome to the SmithBucklin podcast. I'm Jason Meyers. Our guests today are leaders of two SmithBucklin client organizations who also lead the company's efforts in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Rone was recently named SmithBucklin's Director of DE&I to lead development and implementation of policies across the company. Robin also chairs SmithBucklin's inCouncil and is the Executive Director of APRA, an association of professionals who drive their institution's philanthropic missions through work in prospect development, prospect research, data analytics, and more. Sharon Newport is Interim Executive Director of DHI, an association that represents door security and safety professionals in the non-residential construction industry. And in her role on SmithBucklin's inCouncil, Sharon leads SmithBucklin's client services work on diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Welcome to you both, and thanks very much for being here. So, Robin, you are chair of SmithBucklin's inCouncil. So can you tell us a little bit about what the mission of the group is and why it's so important to the company and to our client organizations?
Sure, I'm happy to do that. I want to say thank you, too, for inviting me to chat about a topic that's very dear to my heart. So inCouncil is formed actually before I came. I've been with SmithBucklin since 2018. So really in 2017, 2016, inCouncil was put together to serve really first and foremost as an advisory body, as thought leadership around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how we as a company are building an inclusive culture, one that reflects and is supported by our company's chosen values, which are very important and really are underpinning as SmithBucklin. And then sort of pushing that outward or thinking outward about that, it's also designed to help that thought leadership then benefit our client organizations, new ones, current ones, who might also be on their own diversity, equity, and inclusion journeys from a board perspective, from a content perspective, from a leadership perspective, from a membership perspective. And so really trying to be attuned that what we are building internally also serves our external partners and positioning.
Great. So speaking of our clients' DE&I journeys, Sharon, your role on the inCouncil is primarily related to client organizations, right? Can you talk a little bit about the mission there?
Sure. So thank you for having me. So very much like Robin said, we really saw the interest in creating that congruence in that offering. And so starting from the staff perspective and resourcing ourselves, creating some real internal knowledge so that we can meet clients wherever they are in their journey and that we can support their goals and their missions from all those various perspectives that Robin named. And that looks very different from client to client. So wanting to make sure that we're looking at it from both perspectives and that whatever those goals are can be well resourced from the client's perspective to be able to reach within their membership, within their industries, within their events, within their programs, to be recognized in a mindful and methodical way so that they feel like they're getting the best out of staff as well as the best for their members.
I just want to echo something and support Sharon on that, because just as our clients are on their journeys and there is no right place to be, we've had a lot of focus, particularly in 2020 and continuing into 2021, on issues around racial equity, racial justice, diversity, and inclusion from a corporate perspective, as well as a personal one and a social justice perspective. But there's no right place to be. And something that I think is really important that SmithBucklin does in terms of its values and the work of inCouncil is to really understand that we as a company are also on our own journey. And we feel like it's really important that we're not saying do as I say and not, it's also do as I do. And I just think it's really important to stress that no one is ever done with this work. You're always going and moving and progressing. And we really on the inCouncil really try and keep that front of mind that there's no, oh, here we can check this box, like magic, it's over, like genie blinking or something. And I also just want to take a moment to say about my friend and colleague here, Sharon. She is the lead on our client services work, but that is not the only position of leadership that she shows on inCouncil. She's really a strong thought leader for our internal thinking, as well as what we're trying to shape for our client and potential clients.
That's really kind, Robin. I appreciate that. And I actually wanted to double down on your word of journey, because you're so right. I mean, this is an infinite process. And that's one of the things that we want to stress. Just like, frankly, strategic planning, budgeting, there's aspects to the work that we do in associations that needs to be infinite. You're not ever done. And that's one of the things that I think, to Robin's point, that we really want to model very well for the association community and our clients, is how we understand that, and we want to support their efforts in that infinite mindset.
So on that note, it sounds like there's really no clear, not delineation, but a lot of the activity or a lot of the initiatives of inCouncil internally also are related to what we're doing for our client organizations as well. So can you talk a little bit about that and how it all fits together from an internal employee perspective and then into the client environment?
Sure. I'm happy to take my first thoughts, or not thoughts, kind of comments toward that. And then Sharon, anything you see as value as well. So, we have a strategic plan, a diversity and inclusion plan for SmithBucklin that inCouncil is the owner of. It has 4 pillars. One is around an inclusive team building. There is a diverse workforce. There's one focused on our clients as well as our culture. And so it's not accidental or throwing things at the wall. Each of those have different parts of them and aspects of them that we're building toward. The inCouncil meets throughout the year to review the plan, to see where our action items are, and really understanding how we are driving each of those pillars that each have a number of objectives under them, which I won't kind of belabor, because while strategic planning and strategic plans are deeply interesting if you're the person doing the plan, most people are like, okay, there's a plan, I feel comforted, and they want to just move on. But each of those areas work and complement. There isn't one that's more important than the other. And each year we sort of say, okay, where are we going to really focus our energies within those objectives? Where do we see the things that we want to really move toward in a different kind of way, or that we really think are important to achieve? And of course, with anything, plans have to change. The pandemic and COVID had an enormous toll on all of us, emotionally, culturally, physically, economically. And so we've really been mindful of that impact on how we approach the work we do, not just internally, but also for our clients, and helping to make sure that things that are, again, very important as a value of SmithBucklin around diversity, equity, and inclusion, that we are still moving forward, recognizing that there are some activities that might have to be put on a slight hiatus simply because of the financial or fiscal realities that many of us are facing.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, the other aspect of a good way to look at this work is that it's part of culture work. And you have to have culture and strategy in alignment. And so it often is something that, particularly depending on where the client is on their journey, it sometimes is the first conversation happening with the board for the first time. And so when looking at strategy and not necessarily talking culture, it can be a new conversation. And in a moment like COVID and 2020, there's been a lot of new conversations, and that's been critically important to be able to well resource and allow us all to feel like we are starting a journey, if that's where you are, and that we have a sense of what's possible in a really positive way, because it can feel like this year could really have taken its toll on hope, right? And there's a lot of opportunity and hope out there. And we want that to be an optimistic, positive, clear cut, how we get there, how we actualize the culture that we all want to have, that's in direct alignment with strategy and well-resourced, not only by staff in support of those boards and those clients, but also for those clients to feel good about what they're telling their members. And at what point, they're announcing what they're doing and how they're doing it. There's that old adage that culture eats strategy for breakfast. And and so it sometimes is a new conversation in this lane, or sometimes there's a culture that we have to just acknowledge that we have. And gosh, maybe we're doing a really good job, but let's be more mindful now that 2020 has done some things to all of us, how we could look at that differently as we move forward. And providing those resources felt really critically important to us in this particular year. So we not only were interested in continuing to launch our plans, but is there anything that we need to do to continue to meet the moment? We have really come together as a staff team to just make sure that we are always remaining as relevant as possible to our ever-evolving needs of our clients and future clients.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And one thing I'll say that I think is particularly relevant here is recognizing that culture is not just the responsibility of a handful of people. For instance, inCouncil, when you're
That's
really
right.
talking about building an inclusive culture. And
Hmm.
I find it significant that when you look at inCouncil, you see a real diversity of representation of different parts of this company, which speaks to, well, one, with all credit to our CEO, who is not only on the masthead, but he is very interested. He's very involved. He has a lot of thought leadership and a lot of ownership. Like, he has skin in the game. But also that there are people from communications, there's clients serving, those who are outward facing to clients. There are folks from our education team, from our marketing and communications teams, from tech. And so I really think that that's reflective of the breadth of the services that we offer, but also it's not just one unit's responsibility. And we recognize that is important not only for SmithBucklin's internal culture, but also how we're able to help our client organizations think about who is going to have ownership. And if you're really talking about trying to change your association or make whatever that change might be. It could be I want to start, or we've got a pretty solid place in one aspect, but we really want to improve around how our speakers look or how the content that we're delivering might be received. That it's not just one person in that association who's responsible for. And so we really want to have that reflected in our own internal structures so that it's not just, oh, our client is worried about, getting more diverse speakers. Let me call Robin. First of all, I'm happy to talk to you, but also we have two people from ELS who do a lot of planning, who are very expert, who are both on inCouncil, but also are helping to serve their clients in that respect too. And so I think that alignment really comes through like that, particularly when there's a lot of focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion wherever you may turn.
So you both talked about how much change there's been and how tumultuous, the past year or longer has been. How do you measure the success of what inCouncil is doing? And what sorts of changes have you seen in the company, in our client organizations, and in our employees that help both define and measure the success of inCouncil, but also keep evolving the mission?
That's a really good question. So I'm going to say the way I know we're having impact, first of all, I don't like success or failure because you're going to have all of it. But I will say the way I know impact is that when people complain, and I actually can see, or they have an opinion, I don't want to call it complaint, but they have a point of view related to the work that we're doing. And not everyone's going to love you. I'm at a point in my life where that's just not even interesting to me for everyone to love me. I don't expect that. Please don't get mad at me. But I just feel like, but what is interesting is that, and I really think it's because of the work internally for inCouncil, that people feel comfortable having those opinions. They can say, I'm really excited about something we did, or I'm really disappointed that we haven't spent more time on that. And in fact, I've had some comparative conversations with people who are on inCouncil or not, but have been at SmithBucklin longer than I have. And 201, they say that is a mark of change and growth in your culture, because there was a time where no one would say anything. Like, these weren't even topics that were addressed. So I take great pride in that. And I feel like it's really important that shows that there's a trust that we can do right. And then when someone is holding you accountable to be better or to do better, I think, again, that speaks to the work that you're doing as making that progress. I think similarly, Sharon, I'll defer to you about what you've seen working with clients directly or things that you've heard, but I feel like that's the same model because our clients now are asking, hey, we really need some help doing this. And they trust us enough to be able to try and support them.
Oh, I think you're exactly right. And I think one of the things that becomes really a marker in any cultural work being effective, inclusive of that feedback, is also self-accountability. So when you can watch a culture not only be self-critical, but self-supportive and self-accountable, so that it has not only the we can do better, but you're doing great and let me help you because we want to do this right. I've watched that change as well. And so internally from a staff perspective. And so when you watch the boards or clients within their membership start to do that with each other because they want to get it right. So I'm going to bring you with me, partner. We're going to hold each other accountable in the beautiful way, in the really like, I'm going to support you in this effort kind of way, but also in the, hey, I really wish we could do this. That's healthy. That's a very healthy marker. It's also a healthy marker of turning the corner towards a leadership vibe, towards a leadership stance, towards we don't just want to be compliant. We care, we're invested, and we all want to play a leadership role in making this work. And that has an authenticity to it that is, I would say, infectious and really exciting to be a part of.
Sharon, that is so spot on. It actually makes me think a little bit, and I know that I could talk about this for hours and hours, so I promise you I will not do that. But it really does make me think about the conversations we have within inCouncil, where we are, all of us, are really honest about what we feel and what we do. And we have these straight shooter conversations. And again, it's a vertical and horizontal representation on inCouncil that we have, which I think speaks to that accountability that you mentioned and that sense of trust and that real sense of it is okay to come at this and these topics from different places or different points of view and experiences. And we're really just trying to fundamentally do the cultural work that aligns with the values that are chosen for us as a company.
Great. Well, to wrap things up, given that there is so much change and that the issues change so quickly, is it possible for both of you to map or predict what's next for the inCouncil and where these efforts need to go next?
So maybe, okay, I suppose, let me give my standard 2020 and 2021 answer, which is unclear, but maybe, probably. I think that's a fair response. I can say that there are certain things that, again, we have a strategic plan for inCouncil, which really maps out what we're going to do and what we really think it's important to pay attention to. And we really do use that to really think critically and strategically about our pillars and our goals and where we can make advancement for the company and for our client organizations. Having said that, I'll also say that there are things that are just fundamentally always going to be important. One is cultural alignment, making sure that we are mindful of opportunities for change. Another is really focusing and understanding what our client organizations will need and how we can support them and really be their partner and build tools. And then I'll also say something personally for me that's important and that encourages me is a continued commitment to greater diversity, particularly greater visible diversity at the company. Part of the work that we do is not expecting to be perfect, but being able to be authentic and honest about yourself, where you are and who you would like to be, as well as what you are. So really, it's not just being present, but also being a little bit aspirational. And that's why I feel confident in those three things. They're just always going to be important to us. I don't know, Sharon sits with me at every one of these meetings. And I welcome your input and perspective there.
No, I agree with all of those points completely. And I think what I'll add to that is that I do feel like 2020 really had a lot of us storming, right? We were just storming. And so if you look at one of those kind of traditional trajectories of when you're forming, storming, norming, it's possible for some organizations to really start to create real norms within 21. We were able to plan ahead a little bit better. We're not totally hijacked by what is this thing called COVID, right? We kind of get that this is a thing and we have to navigate it. And it might play out 5 different ways, but we know it might play out 5 different ways. And within that, we have opportunities to do X, Y, and Z, right? With our culture, with our strategy. So while it won't be a total norm, and we don't even know what norm will look like past 21 anyway, I think that we find ourselves potentially just less scared, less hijacked, less reactive, because we have a little bit of proactive in us for 21. And I think that brings about a little more opportunity to, I don't want to say be more thoughtful, but be less reactive and have a little more bandwidth to get at it. And so kind of back to what Robin said, it's like, yes, and there's a couple of ways this can go. But we all know the deal now. We all know this is a deal. This is a thing. We don't know how long it'll look like it does as of early 2021 and what versus a year from now looks like. But we know that this is something we'll be working with for quite a while in terms of navigating public health and navigating all of the things that came about around enlightening ourselves around systemic racism and the impact on our members and our clients and our own organizations and our own personal lives and some of the private conversations that people are having and how people are growing and grappling. And so I think it's an opportunity to just take a deep breath and start to integrate the things that hit us really hard last year and do a little bit better with them this year and a little bit better with them moving forward. And that's exciting because one of the things that I think we really encourage as within SmithBucklin and externally for our clients is we're in this together. And there is no conflict of interest here in the mission for our clients. We are here to support the mission of our clients. And so you have partners in us, you can trust us, and we will support you on those twists and turns of that journey, inclusive of this moment.
100% what she said.
Great. Well, thanks very much to both of you, both for your leadership in helping address these important issues, but also in taking the time to share your viewpoints and experience here. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Jason.
It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much, Jason.